On today's episode of Locked On Canucks, could a former Dallas Stars blue liner be the answer for the Canucks back end, especially on the right side? We continue our player projections with a look at Russian sophomore Vasily Podkolzin, and the reverse retro 2.0 has been leaked, and I give you guys my thoughts on the Canucks' potential new alternate jersey on a Locked On Canucks on a Monday, July the 25th. And of course, it starts right now.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Locked On Canucks, the show that keeps you locked in on all things Vancouver Canucks. Of course, today is our Monday. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. Of course, you can find me _process sports. You can find our show's Twitter at Locked On Canucks. Please also like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, I want to thank you for making Locked On Canucks your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast services. So, as I mentioned off the top, we're in that kind of time, that period now where the off season's kind of in full effect. You know, end of July to August, September, end of September-ish. It's a slow period in the sporting world and especially the hockey landscape. You see, most reporters and insiders are all on vacation. The GMs take a break. Guys are back to training, and they are still, they're just enjoying their off seasons. And things kind of go quiet. Well, of course, this past Friday, things didn't get quiet with Matthew Tkachuk, and of course, in the Canucks land, things are still very loud because there's still work to be done. Of course, we're still waiting for a JT Miller trade. But some news dropped today where it was reported that the Canucks were one of the teams very, very interested in trying to figure out how to clear some cap space to acquire John Klingberg, one of the major free agents, along with Nazem Kadri, still available for grabs. So apparently, the speculation was that the trade that never happened from draft day was a larger part of this. Person reporting it believes the Canucks should trade Myers to the Islanders, and that fell through late. And potentially, it could have been because Myers has a no trade clause. And of course, with that being the case, the Canucks were not able to clear the cap space to sign, said John Klingberg, and nobody else has too. You look at it, he's still available on the market. He is 29, but he's a right shot defenseman, and we know how big that is, especially in the NHL, where these guys are hot commodities. And of course, John Klingberg has had some decent seasons in Dallas, where he's put up some decent amount of points. He I believe his career high in points was, I think he had 67 points he had in 2017-18. Then he's had 40 points, 58-point season, 49, 45. Then he had 47 this year. So he's the guy that puts up 50, 50 odd points a year. But what is he going to cost? Now reports are indicating that he wanted a lot of money. He was asking for a big ticket deal such as JT Miller. But as the reports continue to go on about John Klingberg, that could Vancouver still be in the market for him? Now, I don't think so. If you look at the cap situation in Dallas, they still have a little bit over 11 or in and around the $11 million range, which, you have to think that with Klingberg being on the market coming into August, he probably won't get the same big offer he would have gotten or that might have been pitched to him in the beginning of the free agency period. So they're still available, cap space in Dallas for him to go back. But they still have to they started to resign Jason Robertson and Jake Ottinger, who of course broke out in these playoffs. So, the Stars also, signed Mason Marchment and Colin Mill on the right side defense. So there is still a possibility that the 6'3" defenseman, could, fit in, slide right in, probably play with Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who they are really good friends with. Um, of course, the Canucks, love the Swedes. And Patrick Allvin has not been um, too shy about that. But if the way I only see Klingberg signing is if they make a trade and clear cap space, because as we know they have no cap space. But do you really want to trade Tyler Myers because there is a shortage of right hand defensemen? Could you trade a Pearson and a Dickinson to clear up almost 6 5 something 6 million in cap space and to get Klingberg there? Now would he take a severely large haircut that he could probably get elsewhere to play in Vancouver, to play with his friend OEL? I don't know. I don't think so. So it's possible. The Canucks have very found tradition with Swedes in the organization. Of course, Elias Pettersson, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Patrick Allvin, the GM. The list goes on and on. Niels Höglander, um, the prospect pool. So the Canucks, of course, have been rich in history with Swedes. Henrik and Daniel Sr. are still part of the organization. So could John Klingberg be like, what, I want to play here. I feel comfortable here. This is where I want to be. I that doesn't I believe that that could be the case, but this is the situation we're in, folks. The Canucks have no money. Even if you trade a Garland, Pearson, and Dixon, they could squeeze him in. But then again, that you lose your depth, and I think Connor Garland, as we know, is a valuable commodity to this team and what he can play for. But he is, other than JT Miller, probably the next best asset to trade out. So sticking with the Klingberg thing, I think it was a cool little pipe dream, and the Canucks may have been interested, but it's kind of like what happened with Johnny Gaudreau to Philly. Um, Gaudreau may want to go to Philly, and Klingberg may want to come to Vancouver, but there has to be work to be done by the management team that they potentially just can't do. You can't make the necessary moves to free up cap space. They don't want to. The Canucks don't want to attach sweeteners to certain assets. They're asset strapped. They're not the deepest organization. So that all ties back into the JT Miller trade or not. Hell's going on with that. And I think that's the connection is now until something happens, right? And I foresee kind of see this simmering for a while. Probably 6 weeks. And then, a couple weeks before here, either trade talks intensify or you might hear some contract negotiations intensify with JT Miller. And who knows where John Klingberg is by then? Is he desperate enough where he just, you know, takes whatever deal he can get on the low, and then the Canucks figure it out? Or, how does that play out? So it's going to be very interesting to see, what transpires with the Canucks going forward and their cap situation, how they can, fill out this defense core. Because as I said before, Calgary's not going to be as good. I don't think Vegas will be as good, but there's still teams that are just as good as the Canucks. The Canucks didn't make the playoffs last year. So yes, the Canucks forward group and goaltending, 2/3 of the Canucks, roster is very solid. The defense is the weak point, and that's potentially the most important point, right? So I'm intrigued to see what transpires over the next couple of weeks with the Canucks and their front office and how they go about, building this defense core and how they try to clear cap space that we've talked about. So, but just to tie it up on John Klingberg, I don't foresee it happening. I don't see a guy who's 29 to take that big of a pay cut just to come to Vancouver when he can make more money elsewhere. So I don't think the John Klingberg to Vancouver talk should further, because it's just not going to happen. So that's that. Um, Speaking of talk and you know what's going to happen coming in next season, coming up after this break, we're going to dive into Vasily Podkolzin and kind of talk about what will be a successful season for the Russian sophomore. But first, I want to talk to you guys about betonline.net, which is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your odds, your betting needs, excuse me. Find all your favorite sports and events at the number one online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, we are back, and like as I mentioned, we are going to dive into look at Canucks sophomore Vasily Podkolzin, who, of course, the 21-year-old right winger played 79 games last year, scored 14 goals, 12 assists for 26 points. He, of course, is heading into his second year of his entry level deal. When I look back at 2021, uh, it was a good season, not a great season that we've seen before from like Quinn Hughes, Elias Pettersson, and Brock Best when they kind of burst onto the scene. But there's a lot of good things to have with Vasily Podkolzin. I spoke about it before. There's no question how much he loves the game of hockey. Um, people, many players said he just loves to play. He loves to learn, which are great qualities to have. And just by the point we saw where he was trying to speak in media scrums, speak English, and of course he's over from Russia, doesn't new to the city. But just that was evident to me that this kid wants to work, wants to integrate himself, wants to be a real pro in the NHL. Um, he averages seventh most ice time on the team around the end of the year. He scored, 14 goals, just nothing to sneeze at from the NHL. He has skill to put the puck in the back of the net. I think that you could see that the two-way game is there. He was never a liability on the defensive end for the Canucks. You saw the offensive, skills were there. He, of course, the way I see it going for Podkolzin, is kind of like this. Can he fit into the top six? Absolutely. I think he has all the skills to be a top six player. Play that kind of sandpaper two-way game. Could score some goals and also play, some penalty killing. Um, and I think the Canucks want to give that to him. Of course, he's going to be competing with his fellow Russians, Andrei Kuzmenko and Ilya Mikheyev, to get those top 6 minutes. Um, he needs to work on his skating still. I think skating still is, not where I would want it to be for him, but it's not like he's a bad skater. There's always room for improvement. And I think, you always talk about this, trade bait and would the Canucks want to get rid of this prospect and move on from him? Absolutely not. I think we're all in agreement here that with Vasily Podkolzin this year, the Canucks are going to have two other Russians there. And as I mentioned, Ilya Mikheyev and Andrei Kuzmenko, which will help all three of them. Mikheyev's been in the league for a few years, coming from the KHL. Of course, Kuzmenko is brand new, and Podkolzin is a year in. So those three there can all, work together within the team setting and bond together and grow. And I think that's important. The Canucks have set up their Russian players for success. There's other Russians on the team. They have a great leadership core. We've talked about that. And players like to play for Bruce Boudreau. And Bruce Boudreau has a pedigree coaching great Russian players. He coached Alexander Ovechkin, the greatest Russian player of all time. Coached guys like Semin, Orlov, Varlamov, Kuznetsov. He can coach these. I think he was with the Fedorov too, in Washington. So Bruce Boudreau knows how to coach Russian players. The Canucks have set up their Russian players with success. And I think Vasily Podkolzin will grow next year. I think another year under his belt, another full offseason, him getting stronger, bigger, faster, and understanding the game. Of course, coming from overseas, coming to North America, learning the North American game. It's on a smaller sheet of ice. You have less space. Guys are super fast. Guys are big. Guys are physical. How do you build your body? How do you adjust to the game? As much as it's hockey all over the world, it's a different game, right? You go to Europe and you see they play a different style game. They play North America. Ice is one thing, but also the way they're taught. So Podkolzin coming over, having spurts of success. He did struggle like any rookie does, but he also had moments where he showed flashes of, hey, this guy is a real player. And I think we all Vasily Podkolzin is a real legitimate player in Vancouver. And looking at season and what that should look like, we know there's playmaking. He's got great energy. He works along, he's able to get in the corners and muck it up. So, what would another successful season for Vasily Podkolzin be? Well, just look at the stat line wise, he's probably going to slot in on a second or third line. Maybe we'll get some power play time. So he might not get, certain. I think at least as the season starts, he will get a look at to be in the top 9 for sure. But will he have to earn a spot to be in the top 6? Absolutely. So that's why training camp will be imperative for him. If he is able to crack into the top 6 and gain more trust with Bruce Boudreau and really show that he's put the work in, I definitely think that's a positive step forward. But I think this is the logjam up front, especially right now. I think Podkolzin will probably play on a third line role, maybe with Garland, and because as the current lines constitute, I think it's Miller, Pettis, and Besser, those three. Then I think it's Horvat, Mikheyev, Kuzmenko, something like that. And then it's probably going to be Garland, Dickinson, Podkolzin, then Lazar. Who else am I missing? Other two people right there, Pearson and somebody else, right? So I think he'll play in the top 9 for sure. Can he move his way up in the lineup? For sure. So stat wise, if Podkolzin, get the same, 15 to 16 goals, 20 to 25 assists, around 30 points, 35 points again. I think that would be positive. I don't foresee him maybe cracking the 20 goal barrier. That might be another season, but I just want to see, his game develop, him get stronger, him becoming more comfortable, and taking more penalty killing role, being more of that 200-foot player for the Canucks. And I think over time, once the likes of Dickinson and Pearson and Garland and these contracts expire, and they're going to need him to step up alongside Niels Höglander, who probably will play on the fourth line as well, will have to take a lower role. What do the Canucks do? I think Höglander and Podkolzin have the talent to be, top 6 forwards, like when they cap out. But it's a logjam. So I want to see development from Podkolzin in this 200-foot game, his skating. The scoring we know will come. So I don't expect a huge jump in points, but I just want to see the progression of his game and just him becoming more comfortable on the ice, learning the North American game, and also off the ice. And with all indications with this kid, I think the sky's the limit for him, and I think that great things will come. And I think the Canucks have themselves a player for a long time in Vasily Podkolzin. So that is that. Tomorrow, I'm going to slide over to the back end of the team. I want to start diving into the defense core because I think that's one that needs the biggest amount of work. So tomorrow we'll taking a look at the Canucks defense. But after this final break, we are going to dive into one of my favorite topics, jerseys. And we're going to talk about the new leaks of the Canucks and their reverse retro jersey. So stick around for that. Welcome back to the show called Locked On Canucks, the show that keeps you locked in on all things Vancouver Canucks. I'm, of course, your host, Justin Pooney. Before we get into the reverse retro jersey, Machine Gun Kelly, well-known artist, rapper, all of that stuff, dating Megan Fox, was had a concert in Vancouver where he wore the Canucks Hockey Fights Cancer jersey, which was a beautiful touch. And just to, I thought that was awesome. He's here in Vancouver on Saturday. I thought that was really cool. Machine Gun Kelly. I'm not a big MGK guy, but to wear that jersey was cool. Just builds the street cred up of the Canucks. I remember Drake wore a Canucks jersey a few times. Same with Snoop Dogg and all of that. So kudos to that. But sticking with jerseys, over the weekend as well, the Canucks' new reverse retro jerseys may have been leaked on Facebook Marketplace, of all places. Of course, it was all in a frenzy, all online. The Johnny Canuck jersey, the long-awaited Johnny Canuck jersey. You've all probably seen the photo of it with the navy blue jersey with the green and white trim on the stripes on the thing, and then the Johnny Canuck logo in the center with the kind of design on the pants. This was, everybody's saying, it's based off the 1962 Vancouver Canucks from the Western League before they were in the NHL. And when I think about the Johnny Canuck logo, when I look at this jersey, my first look is, well, I like what Abbotsford did with the Johnny Canuck logo. I liked that, right? I thought that was kind of cool. This jersey, when I look at it, I like it. I don't like it more than the other reverse retro ones, the tie-dye ones with the blue and green. Those ones, as much people hated those like those tie-dye jerseys, I actually liked them a lot. I still want to see the Canucks bring back. I do like the Johnny Canuck and the humble abode to that. I still like wish they brought back the black and yellow. I just think it pops so much more on the TV. But if they do go with this, it would be a nice, pay homage to, the past, before the NHL, because there was hockey in Vancouver before the NHL and a grand history of it. So I'm interested to see if this jersey is actually true. Generally, with leaks, kind of are. Um, I I have to get used to it. I have to see the whole ensemble with the helmets and the gloves before I make a complete judgment of it. Um, the way I would rate jerseys, if I see it, would I wear it in public? This one I probably would not wear in public. The other reverse retro I was trying to get my hands on for a while, but I wasn't able to. Um, but I would wear that one. I just thought that just fits Vancouver more. But that's what I'm used to. I like the Johnny Canuck logo, but I like it in a smaller size. Remember when they had it with the V on the shoulders there? I thought that was cool. I like what Abbotsford's done with him. I think that, kind of touches the Johnny Canuck spot with a lot of people, but also has it on a more prominent basis. So I would love to see the, the fly, of course, the flying skate, but also the flying V, the black flying V. I think the Canucks should bring that back. Um, not the yellow, but if the Canucks were to bring back the black flying V, in some aspect, whether it's a reverse retro jersey or something, I think that would look super sick. They brought it back once, the yellow ones, but if they brought back the black flying V, I think that would look hard. I think that would look sick. And I think the Canucks should definitely bring that back. So let me know what you think with the Canucks potential reverse retro jersey in the comment section below. Again, this has been Locked On Canucks. I want to thank you for making Locked On Canucks your first listen of the day. Of course, tomorrow we will continue on with our player progressions for the next season. We will dive into the defense, maybe some more jersey talk, and we will see what happens with Canucks land tomorrow. But I want to thank you all. I will talk to you tomorrow. Stay safe, take care, and enjoy. Simple as that.